morning, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion. Well, as I teased you yesterday, today you're getting an interview. And what I thought might be really interesting is, if you remember when I went to the Dearly Departed Museum, the guy who owns that's named Scott Michaels, and Scott Michaels gives really great tours all over this city by day, but he's also pretty big Manson family historian. He actually does once a week, or maybe even more than that, an actual tour dedicated to sites, places that the people that were involved in the Manson killings lived, or whatever's attached to it. So with Charles Manson passing away, I thought maybe an interesting vlog would be to actually go talk to Scott Michaels and just ask him, you know, maybe some of the effects of what the Manson family did and how it changed Los Angeles and what Charles Manson's death means. So we actually are going to go over there and meet up with him in 5 minutes. So that's what Daze with Jordan the Lion is today. Let's go. Well, it looks like I got here a little bit too early. All right, here we go. See what I mean? Helter Skelter. And right here in the front, when you first walk in, that is right on the ground. So this case is a little bit new. I mean, this wasn't here last time I was here, and you can see in here there's... Oh, okay. So Scott says this was actually here last time I was here, but it was in a different room. He's got Halle Berry. But what I love is there's actually a piece of the wood from where Macho Man hit the tree when he had his heart attack. That's kind of an odd piece, but wow, that's pretty interesting. Oh, check this out. Those are actually Pugsley from the Addams family's ashes in that box right there. Whoa. So I asked Scott how he got these, and he said that he actually helped put up the money for the tombstone, and so the family basically traded the ashes to be displayed here. Oh, that's cool. That's all the stuff that I gave Scott from the Ike and Tina house. He's got it all here on display. Look at that. Man, honored to have it here. It's an original Ambassador Hotel jacket.
There was always a rumor about Charles Manson auditioning to be in the Monkees. That's always been I've heard it many times in my life. And so I asked Mickey Dolenz when I met him, I said, where did that come from? He said, well, he said it as a joke in an interview once. Mickey said, everybody auditioned, even Charlie Manson. So when I met Davy Jones, I said, was Charlie Manson a monkey? And he wrote, Charlie was not a monkey. And then I met Peter Tork. Guess what he wrote on his own? He didn't even try out, contrary to popular belief. So it's a physical impossibility. Manson was in prison in '65 when they were casting the Monkees, but it's still an urban legend that I've just repeated.
All right, Scott, thanks for letting me come in here today. This is Dearly Departed. This is actually one of my favorite, if not my favorite, museum here in Hollywood. And Scott, you kind of do what I love. You go out and you basically have an interest in Hollywood history, and you find artifacts. You go to where the story happened. And I would consider you to be probably the foremost expert on Charles Manson. Would you say maybe out here you have the most insatiable curiosity in the Charles Manson phenomenon?
I think I'm the person who researches it who can see things most objectively. I do believe so, and but there are a lot of people that know a lot more than me. I can't deny that. But I guess I'm the one that's done something with it.
And you've actually met a handful of people that were either involved in the case or involved in it in some way. Haven't you?
A couple of people. I mean, not a whole lot of people. I mean, a lot of people that had to that have a story to tell. Oh well, yeah, I suppose I have. I'm thinking of Virginia Graham. I do know, who was the woman who was in prison with Susan Atkins, who broke the case. And I've met Mr. Bugliosi a few times, and I interviewed Officer Wills, who gave Manson a citation, a moving violation, the day before the murders, thus destroying Manson's alibi, saying he was in Northern California. And I just found this guy. He'd never, ever, ever been interviewed before, and
that's insane.
His story sort of was an integral part of the case. So it was kind of neat to talk to him. So yeah, I guess I have.
And this is a case, actually, I would say probably it changed the face of pretty much the world at that time. I think when you mentioned serial killers, Charles Manson's one of the first people that pops into people's mind, even though he didn't really do most of the killing. Isn't that? Yeah, isn't that? That's such a crazy phenomenon to me. And when I was doing a little research on here, he himself would say that he had kind of blamed the penal system, that before he went into jail, he actually didn't ever, he said once he was in jail, he learned how to be a good criminal. He learned from other pimps and how to kind of get mind control, and then he came out here and just basically took young minds and got them to do what he wanted. And it's now that he's died, I'm sitting here thinking, does this change anything for Los Angeles, the mentality of people in Los Angeles? Is there any kind of like, does it put it to bed finally?
Well, no, not this case. If anything else, it's put it further into infamy, I think. Manson was, there's always going to be leaders that'll step up, and there's always going to be lemmings that follow. And Manson, took in a lot of runaways. He always said that these are people you threw out. I just took them in. That's true. He never told anyone to do anything. That's probably true. He made these people. Their brains were pudding. I mean, he was doing. They were dropping acid every day, and he was making them do unspeakable things. The girls, sexually, he did everything to sort of manipulate these girls to knock down their self-esteem.
That's how they paid the rent, wasn't it? Out at the ranch?
Well,
in part?
Well, no, actually, he was able to stay at the ranch for free in return for, he did assign Squeaky to George to keep him happy on every level.
Yeah.
And, but no, they just, they helped out with the ranch. There were hardly any financial transactions, really. It was mostly done in trade, and the trade were the girls, yeah.
And I've heard many times people say that almost the Manson case was what pulled everyone out of the 60s. It pulled everybody out of that flower generation. Would you say that, or what's your opinion on that?
Well, people remember the cool things about the 60s. 1967 was basically the best of it. The Haight-Ashbury, Montreux, the Pop Festival, Monterey Pop Festival, sorry. And people don't remember the smelly people and the dirty people and the greasy hair and the shoplifting and the drugs, getting people dying of overdoses.
That's what the Grateful Dead said drove them out of there.
Yeah. So I think that and then I think that the assassinations of Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King, that's sort of the end of the 60s. Manson tied it up with a bow, and certainly after the Manson murders, there was Vietnam was still going on. And Altamont, the Stones concert, that was going to happen after, still in 1969. So, the charm of the 60s was gone, I think, already. But Manson, it's certainly a bookend.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now, with him passing away now, do you think his lore, like the people, there are people that always would write him in prison. There's always people that, he was even married, the last couple of years of his life? Wasn't he married while he was in prison? Or
he was married a couple of times, but not this last time. No, they got a marriage license, but that's as far as it went.
What do you think the fascination is with him? As far as, we said that he didn't do the killings. It's so weird that he's become such a figurehead. People used him. Axl Rose used to walk around with him on a t-shirt, you know what I mean? It's almost like he became a martyr for something.
Pop culture?
You think that's it? It's like...
Yeah, the thing about this case...
The fact that we don't understand his mind, or...
It's not that difficult to understand, though. It really isn't. Manson was he just manipulated people. He got them to do what he wanted to do. He got them to do what he made them think it was their idea. You know what to do. Are you prepared to do this? Are you prepared to face this? Then go out and do it well. That's what he would say to these people.
I remember that quote where he said, if I have to go out and do it, you're not going to like what happens when I go out and do it. It's... So
Manson is sort of a pop culture anti-hero, very punk rock, for those that want to go anti-establishment. And you're talking about movie stars, Sharon Tate, you're talking about Jay Sebring, who knew all the rock stars and the movie stars, and
even Dennis Wilson was involved in all of that.
They all were. They all knew each other. They all partied at the same time. Charles Manson knew Peter Fonda. Peter Fonda knew Charles Manson. The guy, Mark Lindsay from Paul Revere and the Raiders, he knew Manson. And he used to live up in the house on Cielo Drive. And Mark Lindsay told me, he says, Manson was always around. The first time I met him, he was sitting on my kitchen floor. This is a couple of years.
He just charmed everybody. It sounds like he had this something
There was
about
nobody
him.
stopping anybody from going anywhere. And Manson was whomever you needed him to be. Did you need a drug dealer? Did you need a father figure? Did you need, a protector? That's who he was. He was like a chameleon.
Now, have you ever been able to find out anything about what his life in prison was like? What other inmates' impression of him was, or what has he changed? Is he still doing that? Was he still doing that in prison? Do you know? Or
I'm sorry, doing what exactly?
as far as just being that father figure to people, or being the leader in there, or did they have him in seclusion?
Well, Manson had to be kept away from general population because when you're that famous, you have a price tag on your head. There's actual, Jeffrey Dahmer had that happen to him.
Right.
There's real cred in the cemetery, or in the cemetery. There's real cred in the prison for whoever killed Jeffrey Dahmer. So Manson attempts to have been on his life several times. He was lit on fire one time with paint thinner, I think, and but Manson always had a cell phone. Someone always smuggled him a cell phone. He had people on his floor answering fan mail for him. So he was a big figure in prison, certainly.
Will you yourself do how many times a week do you do your Charles Manson tours? At one time a week?
Yeah, just once a week.
That says a lot, though, that you are able every week to find a group of people that has that fascination, that wants to go and see all of those interesting spots that he lived, or where these Mama Cass lived. I know sometimes you'll hit that spot, because wasn't her boyfriend involved in wasn't he selling drugs to them?
Yeah, Billy Doyle, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Mama Cass's house was like the center point for Laurel Canyon back then. Everybody partied there. It's where Joni Mitchell first came to LA. David Crosby took her up there, and the parties there were just legendary, and there was nobody stopping anybody from going anywhere. It was an open door policy, and Manson was there too. And from back then, you wouldn't know the difference between Charles Manson and Dennis Hopper from behind, except one's this tall and one's that tall.
Yeah.
So it was really easy. There was bodyguards or security systems. It's because of this case, why those things started coming about.
Right.
With bars on their windows and stuff.
And that's one of the things that blows my mind too, is that it changed pretty much the whole face of the way people lived in California. They locked their doors more often. You didn't know what was going on, because they didn't know who was doing this or what was causing it originally.
4 months it went unsolved, and at that point, people, when the murders happened, Abigail Folger was literally in bed reading a book in her nightgown, and within 30 minutes was dragged out into the front lawn and stabbed 28 times, and one of the most famous murder victims in American history. So you were no longer safe in your own bed.
No motive.
It's really disconcerting. Yeah.
So one of the other questions I had for you actually is, since you do that tour once a week, every week, are there any common questions or anything that people always want to know about that case that maybe you're able to answer that other people, or it blows them away that they didn't know something that you're able to provide with them?
Well, the thing that's funny about this case is that there's always something more to learn about it. There will always be someone else's version of the story, which will add another nugget of information to the whole mix, and some of the stuff I'm learning is crazy.
Do people provide you with things on the tour, as far as, or things that at least you've heard and you can say, yeah, that's true, or no, that's not true, or is it usually a new audience that's wanting to learn about the Manson case that they may not know about it otherwise?
They come to me for the straight story, and my story has changed a lot because of the things that I've learned. The Helter Skelter, the whole war.
You made a full movie, correct?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
It's called 6 Degrees of Charles Manson, or 6 Degrees of Helter Skelter.
Yeah, and Helter Skelter was what Mr. Bugliosi used to convict these people. The war between the blacks and the whites that Charles Manson was going to orchestrate, and at the end of the war, the blacks were going to win, but they'd need a lawyer. The blacks would win the war because they're physically superior. During the war, Manson and his family would hide in the desert in this pit, and then they'd come out and rule the world because the blacks would need a ruler. That's how Mr. Bugliosi prosecuted the case. Now, Helter Skelter existed on a really, really, really small level. Since Manson did not kill anybody, the only way he was going to get Manson on those 7 murders is that he orchestrated them. Thus, the 100% focus of the trial became Helter Skelter. He left off all the drugs. He left all the the other business, drug burns and protection and paranoia, because it was boring. He wanted to scare people.
Yeah.
We didn't have news 24/7. We didn't have cameras in courtrooms at that point, so it worked. It scared everybody at that point.
That's crazy, and that's almost kind of the technique that they would use for the OJ defense later, was preying on people's fears. Wasn't that kind of like Johnny Cochran knew if he could paint the police as being the people to be afraid of, that OJ would eventually walk from that, or paint the racism as being the main purpose in this city, that he could basically get him off for.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way, but I think you're onto something.
And then you told me an interesting story about that poster behind you. Would you care to talk about that?
Sure. So I was a big fan of Mr. Bugliosi, and I had found that he ran for district attorney and failed. He didn't win. And I found that poster, so I sent it to him with return postage, asking him to autograph it for me. And a year passed, and I never heard from him, and then he died, and I figured, well, that's the end of that. Well, 2 weeks after he died, that showed up in my mailbox, so it's just sort of interesting. I'm sure they were just clearing out his desk, but it was a real surprise to me when it did arrive. I had a couple back in '94, I think, when they tore down the Tate House in late '93.
Right. And you have some mementos from that, don't you?
Yeah, well, there's a big chunk of the fireplace. I have a lot of the fireplace, actually, and some other pieces, drywall from the house and things like that. But I was quoted in one of the newspapers when they tore down the house, and Sunday night I got a call, and they asking for Scott Michaels. This is Vince Bugliosi. I'm like laughing. I'm like, sure it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of my friends just messing around, but no, it really was. And he was doing an updated version of Helter Skelter, the book, 25th anniversary edition, and he was asking me for information. I kept hoping
cool
that I was going to show up in the book, but as an acknowledgement.
Yeah.
But I never did. But I did get a nice note from him for saying thank you for your help.
That's so interesting, especially, I mean, like I said, you've put in so much of your life into kind of encompassing Hollywood history, good or bad, the bright sides of it and the negative sides of it. And so thank you so much for just being willing to talk about this. I know a lot of people don't even want to talk about Manson. They're glad he's gone, and there's nothing to be learned from it, but I always feel like there is something to be learned from history.
There's a lot of raw emotion having to do with him, and you get that. You understand how people can be that angry. I just try to see things differently, probably a bit more objectively.
Come out to Dearly Departed. This is definitely, basically, I mean, this is the spot. If you want to see any Manson memorabilia or anything that's involved in the case, Scott probably has the entirety of it in this town, I would say. And here's Scott's autograph. From his scuzzy head.
He was buried at Calvary Cemetery. Mrs. LaBianca was cremated.
The original documents right there from the cemetery.
So it has the August 16th was his funeral at, I don't see, it didn't say a date on it, but we had time on it.
And then here's a bit of the case. Now I know most of you use my channel as a what to do when you come to LA. This is the spot. This is pretty much my channel, except he has all the memorabilia from everything I've probably ever went to or am going to. And I have to show you guys this. Since I vlogged Red Studios, I have to show you. He's got one of the I Love Lucy lamps from outside of one of the sound stages. That's so cool. So check this out, guys. Scott was just showing me that he was driving by the old Frank Zappa place that I vlogged that time, and just waved at the guys working on the place. They waved back, and he got some of the wood and some of the things from Frank's house, and he says he actually has a spare piece that he's gonna hook me up with. How cool is that? Oh, check that out. Scott was just telling me that was that they gave him that pass. It's actually one of probably Dweezil's backstage passes, but that it came with a Frank Zappa mustache. I love that. It's so cool. All right, these are your guys for great tours in Hollywood. There's no other tour company that if you're gonna hop on a tour van and just want to see the true sites where they're not making up who lives there and making up the stories, this is the company that I think just about everybody recommends more than anyone else. All right, let's take a spin out to the dog park. See if he can't get a little bit of playtime in. See if they're done goofing around out there or whatever they were doing the last couple of weeks. Well, they still have it all blocked off. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That's over 2 weeks now. Sorry, Ja. Well, that's a major bummer. I guess we'll just walk around the neighborhood. He's got to do some walking around. So when I get back home, I think what I'm going to do is do a live stream. So if you missed the live stream, go watch it. And I'm going to do the Patreon Q&A. So if you've been wondering where that's been, I'm going to do it today. Check out this house and the sky behind it. Doesn't that look great? I just was walking, looked over, and I was like, wow, that's almost out of the Golden Girls or something. Boy, those trees kind of look out of place in this city, don't they? I know a lot of people like a lot of light in their house, but this just seems like too much light for me. That's too many windows for my taste. Man, I am excited. Now we're 6 days before I take off for Belgium, and I was thinking about it. You know what's funny? This year, by the end of this trip, I will have been out of the United States to 8 different countries. Every other year before that, 0 other countries. Thank you, vlogging. It's kind of let me do things I've always wanted to do with a lot of people that really want to see it. That's weird. A manhole right in the middle of the grass? Oh, look at that. There's all these little puppy paw prints, and then it says Chester 2017. And on my Instagram, I actually follow a handful of the cities or like Instagrams that are dedicated to the cities that I'm going to. And they were announcing that yesterday was like the official start of their Christmas season. So they had lit up all the buildings in Christmas colors. And so when we get there, it's gonna be full-blown Christmas. So cool. Today, pretty much everyone is out doing Black Friday deal shopping. I never get into that. I figure I'll just buy all my gifts while I'm on the trip. And mainly I'm doing that because nobody in my family that I'm getting a gift for ever needs anything or requests for anything, so at least this way I'll get them something they don't already have. So I think once I get done with the live stream and I get done with the Patreon Q&A, I'm gonna settle in and watch a couple of Christmas movies today and just start getting my mind in that zone. I love Christmas, and playing Christmas music in the car and watching Christmas movies, like, that's the kickoff for Christmas for me, so I think we'll do that today. I still think this house is cool. I know I've shown you guys before, but that section of it right there always reminds me of the old Circuit City building that used to be here in Los Angeles. It looked like a plug. Well, gang, good evening. I hope you guys enjoyed today's vlog, and hearing Scott Michael's perspective from, like he said, you know, somebody who comes from probably one of the more middle-of-the-road perspectives of the Charles Manson case that you'll possibly find. And I just thought that'd be a great interview, especially with Charles Manson passing away recently. So I personally won't miss him, but definitely the world was changed from his presence, and we can definitely all learn something from it. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll see y'all tomorrow. I wanted to thank Shelly Boone for making a donation, and Ellen Hamill for becoming a new Patreon, and everyone else, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Have a great night. Goodbye.